The laboratory for the dissection of human weakness. Welcome to the laboratory for the dissection of human weakness. You have grown accustomed to believing that the world rests upon politeness, laws, and the social contract. This is a lie created so that the sheep may sleep more peacefully while the shepherds decide which of them will become dinner today. You are not an individual until you have proven otherwise. You are a set of biological reactions, biomass controlled by hormones and ancient survival instincts. Friedrich Nietzsche did not write for consolation. He wrote for those who are ready to burn the human, all too human, within themselves in order to find the will to power. A strong person is dangerous, not because he is cruel, but because he is free from your projections of morality. I am not here to make you feel better. I am here to show how the mechanisms of social engineering tear you apart, and how to build your own structure from these ashes. Today we shall examine the first principle, the foundation upon which a predator is built. Chapter 1. The illusion of equality and the overmen. Principle 1. The Clash Phase. A private members-only club in the center of London. The smell of expensive antique wood, the heavy aroma of niche perfume, and a faint metallic taste of tension in the air. Arthur sits in a deep leather chair. His posture is relaxed, but it is the relaxation of a cobra before a strike. Opposite him is James, a man who considers himself a successful partner. Arthur has been silent for exactly 4 minutes. He does not look at his phone. He does not adjust his tie. He looks directly into the pupils of James, studying how his capillaries dilate from the mounting panic. Arthur, I assume our terms for the deal in Kensington remain in force? The voice of James wavered by half a tone, betraying a need for social approval. Arthur slowly tilts his head. The shadow from the lamp cuts his face in half. In force? He pronounces this as if he is tasting cheap wine. Have you come here to ask for confirmation that I have not yet decided to destroy you? James tries to smile, but the zygomaticus major muscle contracts spasmodically, creating a victim's grin. Well, we are friends, after all. An attempt to reduce the status distance through false intimacy. Arthur, slowly taking a sip of water without breaking eye contact. Friendship is a contract between equals. Do you see equals here, James? A direct attack on self-identification. Arthur's internal monologue. His cortisol is already off the charts. He is looking for an exit, but I have blocked it with silence. Now he will give up everything just to end this discomfort. 2. The psychological X-ray phase. In this scene, Arthur utilizes an information vacuum and status dominance. When one person falls silent, the brain of the other interprets it as a threat. The amygdala is activated. James begins to experience a surge of adrenaline and cortisol. His prefrontal cortex, responsible for logic, is suppressed by the freeze or flee instinct. James makes a classic mistake. He tries to fill the silence with words. In psychology, this is called verbal diarrhea of fear. He who speaks first after a heavy pause loses the position. Arthur transmits the Nietzschean distance of ranks. He destroys the social mask of James, making him feel like a biological object. 3. The psychological precedent phase. Recall Solomon Ash's experiments on conformity. The subject was placed in a group of Confederates who unanimously gave incorrect answers to simple questions. In 75% of cases, the person betrayed their own senses just to avoid opposing the group. James is currently in the same trap. His brain signals, "You are separated from the herd, you are in danger." Arthur, on the other hand, personifies the overman who sets the rules of reality himself. For him, the opinion of James is merely noise. Nietzsche asserted, "Comparing oneself to others is the morality of slaves." A strong man does not compare. He dictates. 4. The counter-strike phase. If James possessed the tools of psychological resilience, he would have used the mirror silence technique. Lesson number 1. Your silence is your perimeter. Never fill a pause created by your opponent. Whoever speaks first has acknowledged a need for the other. To seize the initiative, it was necessary to 1. Level the breathing, activation of the vagus nerve to reduce cortisol. 2. Mirror the posture of the opponent, rapport through dominance. 3. Respond with a meta-question. Is your attempt to play at greatness right now part of the negotiations or your personal insecurity? 5. The sensory immersion phase. The cold from the marble floor seeps through the thin soles of the shoes. The room smells of ozone and old parchment. The air feels thick, like resin in which all excuses and pleas are stuck. In this silence, only the steady ticking of the Breguet watch on the wrist of Arthur is heard, the sound of a metronome counting down the time until the capitulation of a weak spirit. We continue to open the mechanisms of dominance. The first chapter taught you to hold silence as a shield. The second chapter will teach you to use your own weakness as a trap. A strong person, according to Nietzsche, is not one who always wears steel armor. It is one who knows how to appear wounded to make the enemy approach within striking distance. Chapter 2. The Trojan Horse Strategy and False Vulnerability. 1. The Clash Phase. A penthouse in the Upper East Side. Nighttime New York behind the panoramic window seems only like a set of cold pixels. Eleanor sits on the floor by the fireplace, clasping her knees with her hands. Her mascara is slightly smeared. Her shoulders tremble faintly. Before her stands Mark, an ambitious investor who has spent the last 6 months trying to absorb her share in a technology startup. I did not expect the board of directors to turn their backs on me, Mark. The voice of Eleanor sounds broken. She uses a submission intonation, making the interlocutor feel like a biological protector. Mark takes a step forward. His posture is that of a savior. Chest out, chin slightly higher than usual. He feels a rush of dopamine. The predator sees a victim in agony. Eleanor, you know I can settle everything. If you transfer the voting rights to me, I will block their decision. Eleanor raises her eyes. They are filled with tears, but her pupils are not dilated. They are constricted, like those of a sniper fixing a target. Eleanor's internal monologue. His ego is currently inflated to the limit. He believes he has won. He has stopped analyzing the documents because he is consumed by his role as a hero. 1 more minute and he will sign the supplemental agreement without noticing the reverse buyout clause. Will you really do that? She hands him a folder. Her hand accidentally touches his palm. Skin-to-skin contact at the moment of an emotional peak anchors his trust on a chemical level. 2. The psychological X-ray phase. Eleanor uses false vulnerability. This is radical pragmatism in action. She exploits the hero effect, a biological mechanism that causes men, and dominant personalities in general, to lose their vigilance at the sight of a defeated strong opponent. From a physiological standpoint, at this moment, Mark experiences a powerful release of oxytocin, the trust hormone, and testosterone, the winner's hormone. This mixture is blinding. His critical thinking is paralyzed. He perceives the signature on the documents not as a business decision, but as an act of mercy and triumph over a woman he previously feared. 3. The psychological precedent phase. In social psychology, this echoes the pratfall effect, studied by Elliot Aronson. The experiment showed that a highly competent person who makes a small mistake or shows weakness becomes more attractive and trustworthy in the eyes of others than a flawless leader. Eleanor imitates a fall so that Mark relaxes his psychological filters. She turns his aggression into guardianship, as Nietzsche wrote in Thus Spoke Zarathustra. You must seek your enemy, you must wage your war. And if your thought falls, your honesty must exclaim at this. Triumph. She allows her mask to fall so that her strategy may prevail. 4. The counter-strike phase. If Mark understood whom he was dealing with, he would have recognized the triangulation of emotions. Lesson number 2. Never trust the weakness of a strong person. Their tears are the lubricant for your fall. If a predator opens its throat to you, it means its claws are already aimed at your heart. To protect oneself, it is necessary to 1. Ignore the emotional background. Exit to the meta position of an observer. 2. Ask a question that destroys the rescue context. Why are you showing this to me now instead of calling a lawyer? 3. Physically distance yourself, breaking the oxytocin loop. 5. The sensory immersion phase. Rain drums against the glass with the monotony of a torture mechanism. The smell of expensive bourbon in the room mixes with the aroma of women's perfume and a barely noticeable, acrid smell of burning from the fireplace. The shadows on the walls seem longer than the objects themselves. In this space there is no room for sympathy. There is only calculation, wrapped in silk and seasoned with a fake tremble in the voice. We are moving into the zone of total fog. If the first 2 chapters taught you to control space and emotions, the 3rd chapter will teach you to control the very matter of reality. A strong person is one who does not adapt to facts, but makes facts adapt to his will. For the overman, truth is not what is, but what he asserts. Chapter 3. The Architecture of Lies and the Destruction of Reality. 1. The Clash Phase, a contemporary art gallery in London's Chelsea. The walls are dazzlingly white. The lighting is surgically cold. Sarah stands by an installation of broken glass. In her hand is a glass of champagne, which she holds perfectly steady. Nearby is Thomas, her old acquaintance, who is trying to hold her accountable for a promise made a month ago. Sarah, you said yourself at the mayor's reception that you would support my foundation. You gave your word in the presence of 5 people? The voice of Thomas sounds insistent, but notes of burgeoning uncertainty are audible in it. Sarah slowly turns toward him. Her gaze is empty, devoid of recognition. She maintains a pause of 3 seconds, the time necessary for Thomas to begin doubting the appropriateness of his tone. Thomas, her voice sounds soft, almost with a sympathy that is more frightening than open aggression. Are you certain that it was the mayor's reception? I was in Milan on those dates. Does it not seem to you that your excessive preoccupation with the project is beginning to distort your memories? Thomas blinks. His brain frantically searches for confirmation. But I remember your dress. Blue. We discussed blue? Sarah lets out a short, dry chuckle. I do not own any blue dresses, Thomas. You should sleep more. Your anxiety is becoming noticeable to those around you. She makes a barely perceptible gesture toward the other guests, creating the illusion that everyone is already discussing his instability. Sarah's internal monologue. He is weak because he seeks confirmation of his truth in me. I am simply replacing his foundation with my certainty. As soon as he allows the thought that his memory is failing him, he will become putty in my hands. I am not arguing with him. I am calling into question his mental health. 2. The psychological X-ray phase. Sarah applies high-level gaslighting in combination with social isolation. She does not deny the fact directly. She discredits the very instrument of perception of Thomas. Physiologically, Thomas experiences a mismatch in the functioning of the hippocampus, memory, and the prefrontal cortex, logic. This causes cognitive dissonance. When external information, Sarah's certainty, conflicts with internal experience, the brain experiences pain. To end this state, a person often chooses the path of least resistance, accepting the version of the one who appears more stable. The serotonin level of Thomas drops sharply, a sense of disorientation arises. He enters a state of confusion trance, in which suggestions are accepted without a critical filter. 3. The psychological precedent phase. Let us recall the classic studies of Elizabeth Loftus on the creation of false memories. She proved that with the help of leading questions and a confident delivery, one can make a person remember events that never occurred, for example, how they were lost in a shopping mall as a child. The human brain is not a video camera, it is a graphic editor. Sarah knows this. She uses the illusion of truth effect. If a lie is presented calmly and with authority, it is perceived as a fact. Nietzsche wrote, "There are no facts, only interpretations. He who owns the interpretation owns the world." 4. The counter-strike phase. Thomas could have seized the initiative if he had used radical empiricism. Lesson number 3. Your reality is a fortress, not a democracy. Never allow another person to diagnose your condition or your memory. If someone calls into question your perception, they are not an interlocutor. They are a saboteur. For protection, it is necessary to 1. Fix the fact. My memory is working properly. Your denial is your strategy, and it will not work. 2. Refuse to make excuses. Do not try to prove that you are right. This is a trap in which you have already taken the position of one who is making excuses. 3. Meta-analysis. I wonder why you are so insistently trying to convince me of my inadequacy. What are you trying to hide behind this performance? 5. The sensory immersion phase. The air in the gallery is dry and sterile. It smells of fresh paint and something chemical resembling formalin. The sounds of footsteps on the self-leveling floor echo in the ears like hammer blows. The blinding light of the lamps leaves no shadows, exposing every mimetic quiver. There is no room for warm memories here. There is only the surgically precise excision of another's will from the fabric of reality. Chapter 4. Information Vacuum and the Torture of Uncertainty. 1. The Clash Phase. An evening reception at a country estate near Oxford. The hum of voices, the clinking of crystal, the smell of expensive tobacco. William is a man whose influence is felt physically, even when he is silent. He stands by the window, slightly turned away from the crowd. Henry, a junior partner who made a small protocol error last week and is now seeking redemption, approaches him. "William, I wanted to clarify the details of the report once more. I hope my last email clarified the situation." The voice of Henry sounds fawning. He violates William's personal space, trying to catch his gaze. William slowly turns his head. His eyes slide over Henry as if he were an inanimate object, without anger, without irritation, just a cold fixation. He does not answer. He looks at Henry for exactly 5 seconds, then shifts his gaze back to the window. The silence between them becomes as dense as concrete. Henry begins to shift from foot to foot. His hand involuntarily reaches for his tie. I can redo it if necessary." He begins to make excuses for an error that William did not even mention. William, without turning around in a quiet but resonating voice, "Henry, you are thinking about your guilt so loudly that you are preventing me from listening to the rain. Go." This is not a request. It is a statement of the fact of his uselessness. William's internal monologue. He is waiting for a shout or criticism to obtain certainty, but I will leave him in a vacuum. While I remain silent, his own imagination paints scenarios of his dismissal and collapse. He will become his own executioner. 2. The psychological X-ray phase. William utilizes an information vacuum and status ignoring. The human brain is evolutionarily programmed to seek feedback. The absence of a reaction is a signal of expulsion from the tribe, which in ancient times meant death. From a neurochemical perspective, Henry experiences a sharp break in the dopamine chain, the expectation of an answer, and a powerful release of norepinephrine. The brain enters a hyperactive mode, trying to fill the void with hypotheses. This state exhausts the prefrontal cortex more severely than an open conflict. William does not waste energy. He forces Henry to burn his own in attempts to guess the rules of the game. 3. The psychological precedent phase. Let us refer to the still face experiment by Edward Tronick. Originally conducted on infants, it showed that the absence of an emotional reaction from a significant adult causes immediate stress in the child, attempts to attract attention, and a subsequent withdrawal into depressive apathy. In the world of adult, strong people, this mechanism works identically. When a dominant figure deprives a subordinate of a reaction, they induce a state of biological regression. Nietzsche wrote about the pure will that does not need excuses before little people. William demonstrates that his world is self-sufficient, and Henry within it is merely an annoying hindrance. 4. The counter-strike phase. If Henry wanted to survive in this psychological meat grinder, he should have applied the strategy of emotional autonomism. Lesson number 4. Your significance should not depend on someone else's confirmation. He who craves an answer has already put on a collar. Emptiness is just space if you do not fill it with your fears. Defense tactics. 1. Accept the silence as a gift. Fine, William. I will leave you alone with your thoughts. Seizing control over the conclusion of the act. 2. Physical departure without looking back. Do not check the opponent's reaction when you leave. 3. Devaluation of the object. Internally devalue the partner's silence as a cheap theatrical gesture rather than a sign of strength. 5. The sensory immersion phase. The room smells of old whiskey and damp earth wafting from the garden. The light of the lamps is reflected in the dark glass, creating the illusion of infinite emptiness outside the window. Silence here is not just the absence of sound. It is physical pressure on the eardrums, a vacuum in which any attempt to make excuses suffocates. You feel your confidence evaporate, leaving only naked, primal fear before the one who did not even grant you a glance. Chapter 5. Radical Pragmatism and Conversion into a Tool 1. The Clash Phase. A glass office on the 40th floor in the city. Semi-darkness interrupted only by the flickering of monitors with stock quotes. Julian stands by the window, hands clasped behind his back. His silhouette seems carved from black granite. Before him is Oliver, his protege and right hand, who has just finished presenting a plan to save the company from a takeover. Julian, I have taken all responsibility for the violation of regulations. If the commission comes, I will say that it was my personal initiative. I will save your reputation. The voice of Oliver is saturated with loyalty. He is waiting for recognition, a fatherly gesture. Julian slowly turns around. On his face there is not even a shadow of gratitude. His eyelids are slightly lowered, hiding the predatory glint of his pupils. You have already done it, Oliver. The voice is dry, devoid of intonation. You signed the documents yesterday evening. Oliver freezes. His hand involuntarily grips the edge of the table. But we agreed that this was a last resort. We could have fought. Julian takes a step forward, entering Oliver's personal space. Oliver, you are not a partner. You are a fuse. Your only function in this structure is to burn out when the voltage becomes too high. Your sacrifice is not an act of heroism, it is a technical regulation. Julian's internal monologue. He believes in loyalty because he is weak and seeks protection in the pack. I, however, use his faith as fuel. His collapse will ensure 10 more years of dominance for me. Pity is a luxury I burned out of myself in my youth. 2. The psychological X-ray phase. Julian demonstrates the highest stage of the dark triad, a combination of Machiavellianism and a clinical absence of empathy. He uses dehumanization as a working tool. For him, Oliver ceased to be a person at the moment he became useful as a scapegoat. Physiologically, at this moment, the activity of the mirror neurons responsible for empathy is suppressed in Julian. His brain works in a mode of cold cognition. Meanwhile, Oliver experiences a collapse of his entire value system. The release of glutamate and cortisol reaches toxic levels, causing a state of psychological shock and depersonalization. 3. The psychological precedent phase. It is appropriate here to recall Stanley Milgram's experiment on obedience to authority. Subjects administered electric shocks to students simply because a person in a white coat said, "The experiment requires that you continue." Julian is that very authority who shifts moral responsibility onto the system. But he goes further. He does not simply give orders. He makes the victim want to sacrifice themselves by using their need for belonging. Nietzsche called this the exploitation of the slave soul. A weak person seeks someone to whom they can give their will, and a strong person is always ready to accept it. 4. The counter-strike phase. If you find yourself in Oliver's place, the only salvation is radical egoism. Lesson number 5. Any system in which you are asked to sacrifice yourself for the common good is a farm where you are being raised for slaughter. Your loyalty is a commodity. Sell it dearly, but never give it away for free. Defense strategy. 1. Deconstruction of the idol. Understand that your leader is just a biological algorithm tuned for survival. He has no higher goal other than his own expansion. 2. Hidden sabotage. Always possess incriminating evidence or a dead man's switch that will destroy the predator along with you. This will create mutually assured destruction, the only format of peace that a sociopath understands. 3. Refusal of emotional investment. Never seek love or approval from those who stand above you in the hierarchy. 5. The sensory immersion phase. The office smells of sterility and expensive ozonated air. The hum of the air conditioning systems resembles the noise of a distant ocean, cold and indifferent to the fate of the drowning. The city below is just a cluster of glowing dots, a biological anthill. Here at the top there is no morality, no sympathy, no God. There is only the will which cuts through space like a scalpel, and the silence, in which only the rhythm of your own heart, which has become as hard as a diamond, is heard. Conclusion: we have completed this dissection. Before you lie 5 tools, 5 steel needles with which the powerful of this world sew the canvas of their reality. You may close this text and try to forget what you have seen, returning to the cozy cocoon of social politeness and moral dogmas. But remember, ignorance of the laws of biology does not exempt one from the role of a resource. Now that you have seen the mechanisms from the inside, you will never be able to look at the smile of a colleague, the silence of a boss, or the tears of a partner with the same eyes. You are doomed to see the subtext. Nietzsche proclaimed the death of the old gods not so that the world would plunge into chaos, but so that the overman, the one who is himself the source of values, would stand in their place. Your danger is not a tendency toward violence. Your true danger to the system lies in your invulnerability to manipulation. The one who understands the rules of the game ceases to be a piece and becomes a player. You no longer belong to the crowd. You belong only to your will. Man is a rope stretched between the animal and the overman, a rope over an abyss. What is great in man is that he is a bridge and not a goal. Your bridge is built. You cannot walk across it slowly. You cannot walk across it while looking back at those who remained on the shore. Either you will cross to the side where power becomes a natural state, or the abyss will swallow you, just as it has swallowed billions of other, all too human beings. Welcome to the real world. It is cold here, but here, finally, one can breathe.